Welcome back to the 42nd episode of the podcast we call The Unknown. My name is Michael Volpe. I report from Cook County, Illinois, and Chicago, and my broadcast partner is Richard Lutman. He's normally near Fort Myers, Florida, which is in Lee County, Florida, named after Robert E. Lee. You said you might be at Universal Studios in Orlando, or
I'm going to Universal in the next few days, maybe. We'll see.
all right,
I'm planning on
not
going to
yet.
Orlando. I love that place. I might go to Disney. We'll see. So if Jeremy wants to go, I might even go to Otter Creek. I'm up that way.
But by the way, and I've been meaning to say this, and we're gonna do an amendment, I guess. I think Disney's got some problems. Now that I got a 2.5-year-old, let me just tell you what all the kids are watching: Blippi, Mika, Rachel. I found this other thing, Gecko's Garage. You know what I never see a kid watch these days? Mickey Mouse. I think Mickey is like old school and out for the kids. And I'm sure Disney's getting plenty of Mickey merchandise and all of that. And they have the Mickey Mouse Club, which is like the newest reboot of Mickey. But Mickey's not that's not a powerful force among the youth, like watching public, and that's a really big problem for Disney. And all this woke stuff, they just didn't focus on their core brand, and as a result, Mickey's like going by the wayside. But we got all kinds of stuff. So there is rioting all over the place in LA. Am I right?
Yeah, LA is in distress right now. LA is, and the core of it is anti-ICE, anti.
All right, so I'm going to play one video. It's that. That's close to a war zone, and I think we could do videos for the entire 2 hours we're on. Scenes like this. Anyone claiming this is no big deal is lying to you. Am I right?
Well, you see what was happening there. You see what they were carrying, right? What were they carrying? The Mexican flag. And what it looks like
that's not illegal.
Is that there's an insurrection happening. Maybe the Mexican government, maybe the Russians, maybe the communist Chinese are behind a false flag, but it looks like an insurrection is afoot in Los Angeles, California, to my
eye. Yeah. Just the same people who thought January 6th was no big deal think this is an insurrection. It's not an insurrection. It is a riot. Now, the liberals are downplaying it. I think the conservatives are blowing it way out of proportion, both for political reasons. But Trump sent in several thousand National Guard and some Marines, I think about 700 Marines. I wanted to debate you on this. So right here, in light of these incidents and credible threats, let's just go to the end of the sentence. In light of these incidents and credible threats of continued violence by the authority vested in me as president, this is from the White House, by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, I hereby call into federal service members of the units of the National Guard under 10 USC 12406. So, to temporarily protect ICE and other U.S. government personnel who are performing federal functions, including the enforcement of federal law, and to protect federal property at locations where protests against these functions are occurring or are likely to occur based on current threat assessments. So he is using this law. Let's find out what this law is and see if it's appropriate. So whenever the United States or any commonwealth or possession is invaded or is in danger of invasion by a foreign nation, there is a rebellion or a danger of rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. Do you see anything that gives him the power to send in the National Guard to protect federal property in the city of Los Angeles based on this law.
Oh, yes, based on the law. But the executive order actually talks about the Constitution and the laws of the United States, and it pinpoints this. But there is, as I said before, an insurrection afoot in Los Angeles, number one. And the President of the United States, under his executive powers, has a full panoply of powers and rights to protect the persons and the property of the United States and the persons that are acting on its behalf, okay, and ensure governmental function. So, if there are ICE officers trying to do their job, if there are federal buildings and facilities in Los Angeles, the President of the United States is within his full rights to send in the military and the National Guard to protect those properties in times where the force of law cannot be brought to bear. Okay, now, you said something before that was kind of a misstatement about the liberals not saying much about this. The liberal in chief, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, came out and said, this is totalitarianism. Right. No, this is not totalitarianism. This is constitutionalism. This is what a federal constitution is. The laws must be enforced, and the president has the power to enforce the laws when local and state government will not enforce it to protect the property and protect the people under the jurisdiction of the law. So this is totally within the bounds, and it got punted out of the court and kicked yesterday within a matter of hours when Gavin Newsom filed his lawsuit. He wanted a preliminary injunction. They said no. The Constitution says no. Trump can do this all he wants.
I don't see where it actually says that though. It says during an invasion. Yes. There's no invasion.
They're flying Mexican flags. How do we know the Mexicans aren't invading us?
How do we know? Trump loves to do this. He loves to create.
No, Mike, you say there's an invasion.
Listen, you went on for 5 minutes.
Well, I want to say one point, and then I'll let you speak. You said there was something wrong when Vladimir Putin put a whole bunch of Russians into provinces in the Ukraine and populated the place to make it Russian as a takeover. Haven't they done the same thing in Southern California and on the border states from Mexico? Is this not a Mexican takeover? The same way that you can argue that Vladimir Putin was making a Russian takeover of the Ukraine?
Right. Then we've had an Italian takeover, a German takeover, a Scottish takeover, an Irish takeover as well. There's no invasion here.
Italian flags or Irish flags.
All right. There's no invasion here. He's creating emergencies the way he did with the Aliens and Enemies Act by, now you got an invasion with the Tron, whatever. You got a Mexican invasion. He created an emergency so he could bypass Congress with the terrorists. Now he's creating an emergency with the National Guard. I've seen on social media, primarily on Facebook, people pointing out that in 1992, George H.W. Bush sent in the National Guard to quell riots after the Rodney King beating, after the Rodney King verdict after his beating. The verdict came down that none of the cops did anything wrong, which was outrageous given the video that we saw. Be that as it may, in that case and in all cases except in the 60s, you had the local government ask the feds in. And that's the difference. This is a local issue. You can say that they're doing a terrible job of quelling the violence, but frankly, since the National Guard's come in there, it hasn't gotten any better. You're just making the situation worse. And I'll agree with Newsom on this. I saw him on, I think it's Pod Save, whatever. It's with some of the guys that were in the Obama administration. And he said, this is for show. And it is for show. He's sending these people in to signal to the country and the world that, and I don't even know how much Newsom can do as the governor. This is more on Bass, but to signal that the liberals can't contain their own property and I need to help them. And that's all he's doing. The National Guard isn't helping at all. Go ahead.
Let me give you a counter narrative. Back in 2020, when there was unrest, and Governor Tim Walz in Minnesota said, no, we don't need the National Guard. We don't need any help. And then, Minnesota burnt. And this is what was addressed yesterday by Pete Hegseth. We learned from 2020, Minnesota, where he's a resident of, he's originally from Minnesota, burnt. And the property and the people were at risk for weeks because Trump didn't, in the very beginning, send in federal forces to quell the problems. Trump is learning from recent history. He's becoming a better president, and in his second term, he's going to be probably one of the greatest presidents we've ever seen. And he's already starting to do it because he's not taking any nonsense. He's restoring law and order where it needs to happen.
It's not the federal government's job to police the streets of LA any more than it's the federal government's job.
It's the federal government's job to make America safe again. That's what Trump ran.
Go show me in the Constitution or in any law where it says it's the federal government's job to make America safe. That's not
right there. Article 2, the power of the executive. The executive is going to execute the laws. You are arguing against law and order, Michael. You are arguing.
Law and order is just an excuse for him to usurp local authority. We have a segment where I find something wrong with one of Trump's appointees, in this case, Dan Bongino, and you defend the guy blindly. And in this article, they show that Bongino is contradicting everything he said as a podcaster. Bongino said Epstein didn't kill himself. Now he says he did. And there's a lot of stuff like this. And he's going to have no credibility because now that he's actually investigating things, he's finding out that he was completely full of crap as a podcaster. My main problem with both of these guys, Cash, his boss, and Bongino, is they want to be celebrities. Cash just went on with Joe Rogan. Bongino's on Fox News every night. They want to be celebrities. The reason the FBI says very little about ongoing investigations is because you don't want people to be presumed guilty before they're even charged. And these guys are spilling the beans about this investigation, that investigation. It's not an investigation of some local politician in fraud. It's always national Democrats that they're talking about. So they want to signal that all of these Democrats are guilty before they've been charged. They're breaking all the rules, and some of these rules have some logic to them. These are awful choices for both of them. They're celebrities. They're not cops. They don't say why they believe Epstein killed himself. All of a sudden, they can't explain what the evidence is, but we've looked at the evidence. Well, did you look at the evidence, or you were a podcaster and said he didn't kill himself? Go ahead. You want to defend him blindly.
I have to disagree with everything you've said. Absent a Lazarus moment, Jeffrey Epstein will not face trial for anything. They can talk about Jeffrey Epstein all they want without prejudicing the case against Jeffrey Epstein because he's dead. Okay, that's number one. Number two, maybe there is an ongoing investigation that Mr. Bongino, the assistant director of the FBI, is not privy to tell us about. But what he's doing is putting out information that he can. Now, the fact of the matter is, you said that these people want to be celebrities. No, perhaps, and it's very, very true, President Trump chose these people to be mouthpieces for the administration. He wants them to be celebrities. He wants them to go to the press. He picked Pete Hegseth to explain about the Secretary about the Defense Department.
To talk about investigations against the
and he picked Dan Bongino to be mouthpieces for the FBI. He picked Tammy Bruce, who was on Fox News, to talk about the State Department. And so you got to understand these types of situations are you're second guessing and poo-pooing Trump's personnel selection. But at the end of the day, Dan Bongino's not investigating cases and making cases. He's reporting to the populace in his role as assistant FBI director what the results of investigations are.
But he's not saying why. He won't say how he knows that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself.
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you exactly why. And I'm somebody who thinks that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. But I'll tell you why I think that Bongino's point is correct. They have video from the NBC and the camera that shows that the entire jail cell was not disturbed. Okay, so he believes in the integrity of that video. And if the integrity of the video is correct, and the jail wasn't disturbed, then it makes it impossible for there to be a homicide there. So that's probably what he's going off of. Now, I've seen the autopsy. I've seen the Jeffrey Epstein autopsy, and it's my opinion, an opinion of medical doctors that are greater than me in understanding this, that he would have to have been a Cirque du Soleil performer to have killed himself in the way that autopsy reads. Maybe the autopsy is wrong, maybe it's not, but maybe there's something else that went on that we don't know about. From the evidence that he had in his possession based on that video And if that metadata on that video was right, then he was in the cell the whole time by himself.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think Bongino could explain that. You're not supposed to be a mouthpiece for the FBI. You're not supposed to be a mouthpiece for the administration. They investigate federal crimes. These guys are celebrities. They're trash, both of them. All right, so Sean Combs criminal trial. I think the reason that this isn't being broadcast live and live streamed is because it's a federal trial, and you can't do that with federal trials. But it's a shame. This is the trial of the century. This has more drama than Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. This is the same level as OJ. So you and I both had a lot of problems with the prosecution's evidence, particularly when it came to sex trafficking, because in order to prove sex trafficking, you have to show that person A, in this case Sean Combs, forced person B, a wide variety of men and women, to have sex with person or person C through force, fraud, and coercion. And they showed a lot of force, fraud, and coercion, but never directly linked it to you have to have sex with someone. And then late last week, this happened. Look at and this is I am the prosecution's worst enemy if I'm going to be a juror, and I love this evidence. In an audio message from Combs to, quote, Jane, who was an ex-girlfriend that they didn't identify, played in court, he warned that she was, quote, going to have a rude awakening. You will have silence if she did not participate in hotel nights with him. That's the smoking gun I was looking for. I think they got him now. And look, so here's the racketeering. That's RICO. 2 counts. I think they got at least 1 count. 2 counts of transporting to engage in prostitution. I think they got that easily. There's been a whole host of prostitutes that said that he paid them, that he flew them in. But that's barely above jaywalking. So that's irrelevant. So and then as far as the RICO, if you believe that he was engaged in a systematic attempt to sex traffic, that is RICO. So they probably got him on everything based on what we saw here. And then last thing I wanted to say, I believe George Anastasia, who wrote for the Philadelphia Inquirer for many years, now he's independent, and he's getting really old. He might have even died recently, but best crime writer in America, in my opinion. And I've seen him in a lot of documentaries, will say, defense attorneys will tell you that you can't cross-examine an audio tape. And that's what makes this really, really powerful. You can't cross-examine what Sean Combs said on that. And he met the elements of the sex trafficking crime with what he said in the audio recording. The only thing they can do is put him on the stand and have him try to explain how that's misinterpreted. That's the only thing I think they can do. I think that's within the statute of limitations. I think they got him. What do you think?
It's getting tough here for Diddy. They put in their second motion for prosecutorial misconduct.
We're about to talk about, but what about this evidence?
Yeah, and that was denied. So I think that on this evidence itself, you're right in the sense that it leaves a bad taste. That it kind of meets the elements there. I think that they're getting very
kind
close.
of. It meets the elements.
Unless of course you can, and that's the point. If you could poo-poo it in any way, and that's why
the only way to poo-poo it is to have him get up on the stand, which as you know,
he's not taking the stand. He's not taking the stand.
How do you poo-poo? It's his words. You're going to have a rude awakening. You will have silence if you don't participate in hotel nights. That's coercion. That's the element of sex trafficking. They got him. This is no longer an emotional case. You and I both said that it looked like the prosecution was appealing to people's emotions. This guy's such a bad guy. Convict him because you don't want him out on the streets. Now they are meeting the elements of the crime. It's not just, and I think this happened within the statute of limitations. I think he's screwed with this evidence.
Okay, I think that he's close. I think they're close to getting there. The question becomes, okay, is that coercion, or still can they get in? They knew what they were doing. They knew what they were getting into, and they opened the door. So you're getting somebody who opened the door to this and knew coming full well in there what was happening, that they were getting in bed with a snake. And how does that that's the point number one. Number two, when we get to the other point, is that looking at the evidence as a whole, okay? And why I'm talking so much about prosecutorial misconduct is because look at OJ. How did they win the OJ trial? Is they poo-pooed the LAPD.
All right, so let's talk about
that. That's his saving grace right now, Mike. That's his only Hail Mary.
Let's talk about that. So Diddy's lawyers, and lawyers get paid a lot of money, and most of the time you think they don't deserve it. They're worth every penny. So on the flip side, his lawyers showed in court that both Cassie and her friend lied about an incident where supposedly Diddy was dangling another rapper outside of a hotel room, and I think they got that from an urban legend of Suge Knight and Vanilla Ice, which isn't even true. Vanilla Ice said that's not exactly how it happened, but he did feel coerced into signing a contract, but he was never dangled off a balcony. But they caught them in a lie, and what's amazing is they gave an exact date for when this happened, and his lawyers went back, and Diddy wasn't in the state, let alone in the city, let alone in the hotel, and proved it to be a lie. I think that Diddy's lawyers, to get him off, now they denied the mistrial, but before I heard it, they denied it. I was thinking for Diddy's lawyers, maybe better to have the denial. You have to have the OJ defense, I think, at this point, which is you've got to put the prosecution and the FBI on trial. That's and right. You've got to say, we caught them in a lie. If they lied about this, they may be lying about everything, and that's reasonable doubt. And you've got to hammer that in. Now, it was effective, and I think it was effective in the OJ trial because Johnny Cochran is not only a great lawyer, but a great showman, a great actor, a great orator. And I think he compelled through his speechifying the jury. The other thing is, and I still can't understand how this happened, but OJ was very sympathetic to a lot of people, even though he killed 2 people. Sean Combs, nobody likes this guy. He's not alleged to have killed anyone, a lot of other crimes. But I think that they can argue effectively, and you only need one, that if you think that they suborned perjury in this case, they may have suborned perjury in every case, which means that you can't believe anything they're saying, and that's reasonable doubt. I think they could get them off that way.
I think you're right, and that's the point I think that they have to go for. But they're actually making their case right now. Okay, the second motion they filed the other day, and it was denied yesterday by this judge. And I was actually in front of that judge in my the bad old days that I had in front of Judge Subramanian. And that guy's a real stickler, from what I know. He's a very by-the-book stickler type.
So why did he deny it? If they showed that prosecutors suborned perjury, that seems like a big deal.
He rejected the motion, and he said he found that the testimony was not, quote, prejudicial. Okay, and really that they
it's not prejudicial for the jury to believe that he dangled someone off of a balcony.
Yeah, well, that's the point. I think that the point is that this doesn't totally derail the entire trial. They had a shot at cross-examination at it, and it hasn't totally poisoned the jury. But here's the issue. This is the second mistrial motion. Okay, they claim that the prosecutors knowingly presented false testimony. They said that the balcony incident was total BS. It contradicted the text messages, misrepresented the location. The prosecutors submitted the misleading photos about the injury of Fabana and they interfered with the cross-examination. So, but what the judge said is, look, you did cross-examine. The jury got to consider that the text messages contradicted the story. The jury got to consider that the location was misrepresented. But there was one that happened before, that happened last month in May. Okay, the mistrial attempt that happened because of the line of questioning about the Kid Cudi car bomb case. Okay, the prosecution, I mean, the defense already said that was a problem too. Now, if they continue with all of these claims, and let's say there's another one or two or three of these motions, then they can make a motion at the end of the trial or the end of the prosecution's evidence to say there's so much taint here that we have such a problem that this case cannot be fair. This is a mistrial. We have to run it again. And so what the judge, the Judge Subramanian said was this one specific incident about the balcony doesn't derail the case. And before he said in May that the one specific incident about the Kid Cudi car bomb didn't derail the case. But if they have 3 or 4 or 5 more pieces of evidence or testimony,
they're going to say that combined, it's going to derail the case. This is very important. The defense also argued that Ventura finds, that's Cassie's testimony, that she witnessed the balcony incident, quote, cannot be true, and that prosecutors knew that she, quote, merely heard about it afterwards. This is important. You know this to be true. Every jury instruction includes this, that if a witness was caught in a lie, you can dismiss all of the witness's testimony. Cassie was caught in a lie. She's not as sympathetic as she came off. She's a big fat liar, committed perjury, and there's 12 jurors, and I can bet at least one of them when they go into the jury room, and I think this is what his team has to hammer, they're going to make the argument, I don't care what Cassie said. Cassie was caught in a lie. I don't believe anything she said. You dismiss her entire testimony that way. This is a really big deal.
They have to do, and you said that 100% right. It's called falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. False in one, false in all. And they can totally disregard the testimony, any evidence linked to the testimony, any corroboration. Now, what they have to do, the defense has to basically characterize not just the witnesses, if there's a pattern, not just the witnesses as liars, but they have to characterize the prosecutors as used car salesmen. Basically, and I've been to federal cases where criminal defense attorneys have gotten away with, in closing arguments, saying, you have to figure out who you got to believe. You can't believe these witnesses. And I'm not going to say that the prosecutors are used car salesmen, but it sure as hell sounds like it. That's what they have to do. That's what they have to do there.
Johnny Cochran smeared the entire LAPD because Mark Furman lied about being a racist, which didn't even have a direct link to the case. That's in the OJ trial, for those who are too young to know what I'm talking about. This is directly linked to the case. We're going to find out if Diddy picked the right lawyers, because I think they...
But the lawyers and the judge, it's the judge too. The judge probably won't allow stuff to get too racy in front of the jury. That's it. This judge is a real asshole, in plain English, from my experience.
No, this is in closing
so
arguments.
By the book stickler, he's not going to allow any leeway.
No, but you have to hammer it home that prosecution witnesses were caught in lies. Those are the ones that we caught. You should not believe them, because we have shown that the prosecution and their witnesses will lie to you. If you dismiss any of this testimony, you should dismiss all of the testimony, and then you have nothing on our client. That sort of argument, I think, is coming.
But you're right, Mike. But that's where they have to go. That the whole proceeding is tainted, and the reason why it's tainted is the prosecutors and the FBI agents are all crooks, and they're used car salesmen, and they're liars. That's what you got to do.
Yeah. All right. I did this out of order, but I wanted to do this, and then we're going to move on to the what the hell segment. But Elon Musk, we have an Elon files. Elon's always in the news, arguably the most famous person in the world. He got into a big spat with President Trump. It started with his opposition, the big, beautiful bill. It started policy-wise, that he thought it was a big bloated bill. It was adding to the deficit. It turned really personal. He claimed that Trump is on Jeffrey Epstein's secret list. I don't think there's a secret list. I don't think he'd know it. They went back and forth. And here's the key, folks, for me, right here. This is Central Time, because that's where I am. 2:04 this morning. I regret some of my posts about President Trump last week. They went too far. He apologized. You know what? Let me see. I think this is why he apologized. Let's take a look at the 5-day chart. Yeah. This is why he apologized, folks. This thing went down, and now it's going back up. The stock price was taking a hit, And one other, the P, I, I don't know what to say. This stock is not worth $182 per earning, but I think it's way overvalued. But I, I think he did go too far. But my problem is Trump always does this. He couldn't ever be magnanimous, and then he turns Elon from an ally to an enemy, and I guess they'll make their way back. But he does this with everyone.
Mike, I must say that you're one of the greatest value investors I've ever seen. There are other tangibles that people invest on, and the fact that the projections on market share and what he's doing, Elon and that company, now that he's focused on the company, can do really warrant, I think, the valuation, if not a greater valuation. But that's just my opinion. It's neither here nor there. You said it correctly, though. Trump does this. Okay, he views loyalty as sacred, as the sacred commodity. Disloyalty is the cardinal sin. And if you cross Trump, you can get back in. But the only way to get back in is to bend the knee. And Trump has to make a very public show of forgiving you. And Trump has to show that he's the victor. Where did we see this before in politics? We saw it with Ted Cruz. Remember Ted Cruz in 2016? Trump called him a sniveling coward. He said Ted Cruz was a pathological liar. He said the GOP shouldn't even nominate him. He mocked Cruz's wife. He mocked Cruz's father. And then in 2018, he's beautiful Ted. Beautiful Ted Cruz. And he's campaigning with him in 2018. Lindsey Graham, a perfect example. He was a Trump critic. Trump got on stage and famously gave Lindsey Graham's personal cell phone number out to everybody. Okay? He was a Trump critic. He called Trump unfit. He said Trump was a race-baiting, xenophobic bigot. He said that Trump was this and that. Now he's a Trump ally. Basically, Trump has his nuts in a jar in the Oval Office. Mitt Romney's a perfect example. The Trump,
Romney still doesn't like the guy.
But Trump calmed it down with Mitt Romney. But the most important one, Marco Rubio. He's the Secretary of State now. In 2016, he called Marco Little Marco. He talked about his sweating and his height and the debate and how he would stutter and this and that. And but once Trump won and Rubio came in line and supported him, what did he say? He's a good guy. Now he's a great guy. He's chief counsel of Latin American policy and global policy. He's the Secretary of State. So that's what we have here. He needs a mea culpa moment very publicly. Trump could have let it ruminate for a little bit. But what's going to happen? There's going to be a conversation between the two, and Trump's going to say, very smart move by Elon by recognizing he was wrong. He's a great guy. We're all back on track. Everything's great. That's what's going to happen. He's going to put it on Truth Social, and this is going to be over. But this is the process for Trump. If history bears out any relationship, now he's going to forgive publicly. He's not going to forget, but this is how he does it. And he will forgive you because forgiveness is not the same as trust. He will forgive you if there's political expediency to it.
I think that Elon wants to step back from politics anyway, but he needs the stock price to calm down. Andrew Jackson was the same way. If you were his enemy, that he didn't like that at all. David Crockett, or also known as Davy Crockett, never liked each other. They were on the opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of the Trail for Tears. Crockett wound up losing that and then went to Texas and was at the Alamo and died. It was the same way. Jackson felt like if you crossed him, that was something he could never forgive. And he grew up that way. But you're constantly making enemies. I don't know about that, but this thing was childish. They should have done this in the back. However, he should have just stuck to the criticism of the big beautiful bill, and he should have kept it policy wise. But maybe this is what happens on social media, or maybe he doesn't need to gain attention. He's got 220 million followers. If he puts a post on X and says,
"Owns the platform."
Yeah, that's his platform. But if he says, here's why I disagree with it, and obviously he can write as long a post as he wants, and it's all policy, millions of people are going to see it.
He doesn't have to. Elon has to do, Mike? I think he has to go to Texas, and he's got to build out that company town that he has. They just came in, and it's basically Elonville. SpaceX and X and all these other places own that town. It's like its own. It's almost like the Disney World. Like they have the sovereign rights. Like Elon's going to have a little fiefdom, and he should just hang out in Texas, build up his business, Stay out of the politics for a little bit, and he'll be that much better when it comes.
All right.
Make peace with Trump and just go
All
about it.
right.